This is the story of the one. As a maintenance engineer, he hears things differently. To the untrained ear, everything on his shop floor might sound fine, but he can hear gears grinding or a belt slipping. So he steps in to fix the problem at hand before it gets out of hand. And he knows Granger's got the right product he needs to get the job done, which is music to his ears. Call, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
This is a podcast from Minute Media.
Hashtag no music, no intro. We are so excited to have this guest on our podcast. If you have been a Saints fan, I'm sure you, in just passing, you've seen interviews that he's done in the past with Drew Brees, one-on-one post-game interviews. We have Mike Nabors, the author of the Brees Way, a compilation of going through Brees's career as a Saint and career as a whole. And there's probably anyone that doesn't know Drew better in terms of just getting to speak to him after every game. Mike, thank you so much. I said this offline before we start recording, but Ryan and I sincerely thank you for providing us a copy of the Brees Way. If you're a listener, please seek it out. It's a great read. Like I told Mike earlier, I've read it all the way through once. I plan this summer to read it all the way a second time. Thanks for coming on the Hashtag Saints Twitter podcast, Mike. It's great to have you on.
I feel like I know you guys. We're one big Saints Twitter family, man. So
there you go. There it is.
Through the internet, baby. We're meeting here, but it's great to talk to your audience too, which I know is a very influential one among the Who Dat Nation. And you know what I've learned, guys? Promoting a book is kind of like the NFL, man. It never ends. Yeah. So with Father's Day coming up, man, you got to buy the Brees Way. So I always found,
Perfect Father's Day gift.
Yeah, absolutely, man. If you're a Saints fan, go buy the Brees Way. And you can go to my website, MikeNabors.com, and there's all the information there. I'll send you an autographed copy of it too. But if you don't have time for that, it's on Amazon. It's on every bookstore has it. So, but I appreciate you guys having me. We can talk a lot about a lot of things here.
Go
ahead, Ryan. I'm sorry.
No, I was just saying I really enjoyed the book also. It's a perfect book to have sitting on your table, at the house, or like me, I like to have a couple books in the bathroom, because get a lot of, just nice peaceful time in the bathroom where I can read in peace. But it's perfect for that, man, because, I followed you for a long time on Twitter and, your career, because I don't remember how, maybe I was watching CST and I would see you interview Drew Brees. And I was like, man, he interviews Drew Brees every week. Like, this is weird because you
win or loss, it didn't matter.
It didn't matter. And usually the quarterback does the press conference after a game. Maybe if you're lucky, you get like a locker room interview. But he would have, like Mike, you would have these, nice 10, 15-minute in-depth interviews after a game. And it was always a little better than the press conference because obviously at the press conference, they give the kind of packaged answers. But, over the years, you get to see you and him develop a relationship to where he gives you some of those insider things that, us fans kind of look for, after a win, after a loss. And, I found it so valuable. I've watched every interview you did with him after every game because I always made sure to go. If I didn't watch it on TV, you always say, have it posted on YouTube to go back and look.
I appreciate that, Ryan, because I remember you tweeted me that after Brees retired, and when Brees retired, everybody thought my career was done too. Like, are you done? Are you finished with television? So
I shouldn't laugh at that, Mike, but that's low key hilarious.
Well, I remember driving to the airport after the Bucks lost in the playoffs, Brees' last game, and a radio guy said that, and I almost swerved off the road. Like, come on, man, really? I mean, I've enjoyed my time with Drew, but yeah, it was a great run. And if you read the book, I outline the story of how it all came together with Drew, and it was very unexpected, but it really was the perfect storm because my first year covering the Saints, guys, was Peyton's first year, obviously Brees' first year. They draft Reggie Bush, and it was the horrible preseason and then the magical 2006 season, but we didn't start doing those interviews till 2007. But, I thought we would do it for a couple of years, and we ended up doing it for 14 years and almost 300 one-on-ones. And the crazy thing is I didn't know this until after he retired, but I brought him together with my network, and it was a deal to make it happen, obviously, but he signed a 1-year deal every year for 14 years. And I thought at one point maybe he signed a 3-year deal with us.
Interesting.
It was a 1-year deal every year. So at any point he could have backed out, and he never did. And I always appreciated that.
That is fascinating. It's kind of, no jokes, but it's honestly how his career was with the Saints towards the end. It just signing
that's right.
1-year deals. This is perfect timing to have you on this podcast and talking about this and talking about Drew. I guess the perfect place to start is the hubbub that's kind of percolated this week. And I don't know what's official and what's not. Obviously, I don't know. I'm not 100% sure if Andrew Marchand reported it first, but that Drew may be on the outs in terms of what his next venture in his career was in terms of broadcasting. That led to some tweets from Drew and things like that. And just from your sense of just getting to know Drew over the years, what are your thoughts of what has kind of transpired within this week?
He's not going to play football for the Saints. He's not going to play football in the NFL. When you put pickleball on the senior tour and all that, it's just ridiculous Twitter fodder. Maybe he would have came back last season for one game and humored Sean Payton. Maybe. I doubt that. We heard that rumor too, and he acknowledged he thought about it. But he's not playing football. Here's the deal with Drew and TV, guys. It's been a crazy few years with all the big money, and it started with Tony Romo. And Troy Aikman got a little envious, and then Troy Aikman wanted the money, and then he ended up getting it. And then they gave Tom Brady the money because I think Fox is like, okay, Troy, if you're going to pitch a fit, we'll get the GOAT and we'll bring him in here. We'll bring Tom Brady in. And Drew's kind of lost in the shuffle a little bit. And I think if you look at him, and this is what I hear behind the scenes, he only wanted to do Notre Dame games for a year. He didn't really want to do studio. He wanted to do play-by-play, okay? And I think at the time, and this is just me, the things that I've heard, Drew hasn't told me any of this, but just things that I know from the things that I've heard behind the scenes, that I think in my mind, Drew was thinking, okay, I'm going to call Notre Dame games for a year. I'm going to do in studio for a year. I'm going to call select NFL games. And then Al Michaels is probably going to move on. They're going to elevate Tirico. I'm going to work with Tirico. And hopefully after proving myself calling these games, they'll move me up with Tirico. And maybe Collinsworth will take a job with Amazon. And I'll be that guy moving forward. Well, as we know now, Collinsworth isn't going anywhere. Kirk Herbstreit's at Amazon. Al Michaels at Amazon. And Drew is back to square one, where I don't think he wants to call Notre Dame games anymore. He doesn't want to do studio. He wants to call NFL games. I think he'll wind up at Fox. And I think the mutual part of the NBC deal is for real. I really do. I think they would want him back in studio. I mean, Drew could have been more critical, especially as an analyst, but it's his first year. I think I'm so quick to judge guys now. Like, I thought Booger McFarland was really good, frankly. I thought they were too quick to push him either. Booger McFarland lives in Tampa. I live in Tampa. I hear him on the radio all the time. I love you may not agree with his takes, but he's not afraid to criticize. He's very knowledgeable. He does his homework, but they kind of shoved him out of the booth after 1 year. But Drew, I think, will go to Fox, in my opinion. But the mutual part, and here's the thing too, guys, with this Twitter post that Drew had, Tom Brady has retired and he is unretired and has not had one single press conference. He has controlled the message from day one. Okay. Marchand has this NBC report, and I'm sure it's accurate, but Drew is looking at Tom Brady, and it's the world we live in, guys. If you're a modern athlete now, if you're LeBron James, if you're Tom Brady, if you're whomever, you want to control the media. You know why? Because you can. So Drew was trying to control the message a little bit and have some fun. Of course, it gets blown up, but he's not playing football again. I think it was mutual because the reasons I stated, and I think he'll end up at Fox probably in the second tier games. And the good news is, guys, with all the noon games, maybe he's calling a lot of Saints games this year.
And, I think you hit the point directly. It takes time. I remember, I think it was Trent Dilfer saying a long time ago how he struggled calling games when he first, because it was just so hard to criticize players because they're NFL players, and it's kind of like you're in this little fraternity,
Yeah.
and you just don't want to put other guys on because you know how hard it is. You know how hard it is to get up to get up to ready to go and play every Sunday, and get criticized if you miss a tackle or if you happen to throw up, an errant pass and stuff like that. So he always said it was hard to learn how to criticize guys, but then you just kind of once you're in the game, in the media game for a while, you realize it's just part of the game and you got to do it. So I thought it would take time for Drew. And, I watched him. I tried to listen to him closely. I thought he really did do a really good job calling the Notre Dame games. I thought he was better at calling college than he was in the pros because of that familiarity. Where in college, you could kind of criticize these guys. And not just criticize, but it's just a different way of analysis when you call college. I thought it was interesting how you pointed out that he was using Twitter as but it's just the way the game is today, because
Absolutely.
it's like you could. I mean, I remember Sean Payton saying like he tried to tell his players that you got to treat Twitter just like a press conference because it's literally you standing up there giving a view, and I think that's just what Drew did. I think Drew knew what he was doing when he stuck maybe play football in there. Like I just think he knew what he was doing. I don't know if he knew that every single channel would run with it, but I think he knew that would tickle people's fancy a little bit.
Well, once you release this podcast and we get the headline that Drew's the new quarterback of the Seattle Seahawks, you just have to call me back and we'll do this all over again. But I don't think that's going to happen. I do think this, though, you hit on a point that it's in my book. And of all the questions I asked Drew, he never got upset with anything I asked him, because a lot of what I asked him, he either knew it was true or he knew as a leader of the football team, he would have to answer it, right? But the one time he took exception to one of my questions, and I outlined this in my last chapter, which is talking about his future, ironically, and his broadcast future, was I thought for sure Drew would retire after that 2019 season. I really did. Yeah. And now, if you talk to Sean Payton and some of the players, they really had to convince him to stay. And there was some back and forth there after that season. And the crazy part is if Drew hadn't stayed, Tom Brady would be a New Orleans Saint. Yep. That's a fact, too. I like to remind my friends that in Tampa, by the way, when they get all puffy with the chest down here. But anyway, I will say this. When I asked Drew, I said, listen, if you're going to go into broadcasting, you got to be critical of players, not only your former teammates, but guys you just played with. And he looked at me, he said, why? And I said, well, that's just part of the job. And he's like, well, I don't look at it that way. I think it's all in how you say it. And I think if you ask Drew after doing this for a year, it's the way you say it, sure, but there's an art to it as well. And you got to find your comfort zone. I mean, Chris Collinsworth, to me, love him or hate him, does his job very well, does his research very well. I think he's really good. I do too. There's a reason why he's been around so long. And today's generation, they have no idea that guy played. He actually went to my high school, and he was a fantastic NFL player. But people obviously know him as a commentator. But the fact that he hasn't been relevant as a player for decades, but he's still the number one analyst, just shows you that you have to be critical to make it in the business.
That's so well said. And something that you said earlier is we live in an age where if you're not good the first year, you're gone, right? Yeah. And I think an interesting juxtaposition to the whole Drew Brees thing, and this is all my personal opinion, is that, I think it was reported today or yesterday, I'm not fully up on Twitter, but that Greg Olsen will be calling the Super Bowl with I'm losing his name.
Burkhardt.
Thank you, Kevin Burkhardt. Yeah. This year. And I saw that and I was like, I've seen a lot of, and this is a lot of love of Greg Olsen, like as a commentator. And I said it on Twitter, I must have missed the boat or the train, because I just personally just did not enjoy him as a commentator. It has nothing to do with the fact that he was a division rival for years. he didn't I didn't feel like he was engaging as a commentator, but now he's doing a Super Bowl in his year 2 of commentating. And it's I get the sense that some of it is performance based, but I think a lot of it plays into the public perception, right? The public perception of Greg Olsen last year was that he was great and everybody loved him, even though, there may be outliers like myself that didn't. So, and then for Drew's perception, whether it was right or wrong, it was Drew was not overly critical. He was quote unquote dull, things like that. And now, there's the whole report of maybe him not returning to NBC. So public perception plays such a huge part in the whole commentating, broadcasting business as a whole, it seems.
Yeah, to keep it Saint-centric, though, with Greg Olsen, think about this. With Greg Olsen getting promoted and the chances of Brees coming to Fox, you know who a big loser is? Jonathan Vilma.
Mm-hmm.
Because Jonathan Vilma's a guy that was there before Greg Olsen, another new guy.
And he's good.
Good.
And he's very good. So I think I would rather, frankly, I'm just being objective here. I think Vilma's better than Olsen in my eyes.
Yeah.
And that's no bias. Like I love Vilma, but like I don't care. Like as far as commentating, either I enjoy it or I don't. I don't care if I love you as a player or not. He's really good. And I was happy he got the job because, he would do the preseason games for a while. And I was like, man, they need to get Vilma during the regular season. And when they finally did, I was like, man, this dude's really good because he's so passionate. And, there's a kind of a balance you got to do where you don't get too technical and too in the X's and O's. And he's really good at, being technical, but not overly technical and showing that passion that he has for football, where it's just, if you see a good play, get excited. Like we like that. We like you to get excited. I think that's what Drew kind of had to learn, where it probably took time for him. And he showed it when he covered Notre Dame, where he would get excited about certain plays. And I think people wanted to see more of that, in the NFL.
Yeah, and I think the reason that, in my mind, he only wanted to do Notre Dame for a year were really two reasons, guys. One was because, he thought hopefully, with the contracts being up for Al Michaels and all the movement, that he would be elevated with Tirico. This is just me thinking, okay? I'm not quoting Drew on this. But the other thing is, man, when you do Notre Dame games and the NFL, you're away from your family from Thursday till Monday morning when you fly home. And Doug Flutie, who wrote the foreword for my book, who's Brees' mentor when he first came in the league in San Diego, he went the similar path at NBC. I mean, he went Notre Dame games, he called NFL games, so he knows the schedule. And he told me, he said, it's going to be tough on Drew. This was before Drew even did a game. He said, it's going to be tough because you know why? He's going to leave Thursday for all these pre-production meetings. You have to talk to the coaches. You have to talk to the players. You call the game. Then you're doing the NBC in studio, or sometimes you're doing a game. And like I said, you fly home Monday. But on Saturday, his wife Brittany's going to be sending videos of Balin and Bowen and all the boys playing 7-on-7 football that he's going to be missing. So I think in his mind, he's thinking, okay, you know what? He's telling his wife, I'm going to do this for 1 year and then I won't have to do college and then I'll do the NFL. That's just my opinion.
Yeah.
And when it didn't happen, I really believe the mutual part of this thing is real. It's not that they didn't want Drew back. It's just he didn't want that schedule again.
Yeah.
It's funny that you say that about Drew, but it seems like Tom Brady's completely okay with being away from his family the rest of his life. Yeah. I digress. In writing this book and interviewing Drew over the years since 2006, as you have, what's been like one thing for you that's maybe stood out the most in getting to know Drew as the player and as the person?
I will say that in all the interviews we did, he never got upset with me. He never was short with me. He was always professional. But the thing that really stands out is he was always better after a loss than a win. And I've never understood the hate with Tom Brady. I know people are jealous of Tom Brady, but to me, the big difference between Tom Brady and Drew Brees is how they handle losses. And I don't want to hear that, well, Tom Brady's competitive. You don't think Drew Brees is competitive? Drew Brees is every bit as competitive as Tom Brady. Absolutely. But when Tom Brady loses, you know this, guys, He'll sometimes walk off the field and not shake other quarterbacks' hands, other players' hands. He'll have a press conference where he'll answer 15 questions in a minute and a half, which means he's not answering the questions. When Brees lost games, especially the big ones, the Minnesota Miracles, the no call, he was better than the nights he broke records. And part of that is because he knew he was a leader on the football team, and he knew what he said mattered, and it would permeate through the locker room. And Sean Payton, frankly, was the same way. Payton was much better after a loss than a win. The one point looking back at last season, I know we're talking about Brees, when I thought Peyton was just different was when they lost that game in Nashville against the Titans, when they didn't play well, but they could have won. Simeon played decent down the stretch, and despite everything, they could have won, right?
Right.
Peyton was so short with us after that game. I hadn't seen that after a loss, maybe ever, as a head coach. And I never saw Brees like that. But that's the thing that stands out, is that he never got rattled. He never got upset with me until I asked about that critical thing in broadcasting, which is kind of funny just looking back now, a couple of years later. But after a game, man, he was always good, and he was better after a loss than a win. And you can't say that about hardly any superstar quarterback that I've covered in my life.
It's funny. It's funny you mentioned Peyton though, because last year it was seeing him on TV during the Dolphins game when they had all those players out.
Mm-hmm.
And then his end of the season press conference, not when he retired, but it was like, after the last game, he gives his little Monday morning presser.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just different from any other morning, after season presser that he's ever given, where they don't go to the playoffs or anything. And that was the first time when I saw that presser where I was like, is he leaving? And I was just asking in my mind, like, is he leaving? Because he didn't talk about like the postseason. He didn't talk about like the next season, Senior Bowl. He didn't talk about like, we just got to, we got to get the team together. He just didn't talk about none of that. It was just very short and just kind of, I'm about to get out of here type of deal. And so when he did retire, it was just like, okay, like those were the tea leaves. But on a different note, with all the interviews that you did, are there any memorable ones that kind of stuck out to you over the years? There's a ton of interviews, so I know it's kind of hard. But are there any that just kind of stuck out to you that you just never forget?
You know what? I didn't know how it would work during the pandemic, because obviously, it was, we got to keep more than our arm's length. We can't be in the same room with these guys. And we were wondering how it was going to work. And I think actually my network was more concerned about it. And I've talked to Chris Stewart, who's Drew Brees' marketing guy, who actually initially negotiated this whole deal with. And they were excited about the possibilities of how it would work on Zoom. But to answer your question, Ryan, my most memorable interview with Brees was after a game he didn't even play in. It was when he was injured in his last season, and Taysom started against the Atlanta Falcons and had that good game. And, normally during his injuries, that was kind of a rare moment for us, because he didn't talk afterwards. He would only talk with us. So it was even a bigger deal that we had Brees one-on-one. But the PR guys told me, hey, is it okay if Drew goes home and does the interview from home? And I'm in the press box thinking, hell yeah, it'd be great. That'd be something different. Yeah. So I was excited about it. So the funny part of the story is, he dials up on the Zoom and he appears in his kitchen. And I started talking. I said, how about Taysom? We're kind of talking about the game a little bit. And I said, are we going to do this in your kitchen? And this is vintage Brees. He looked at me. He said, oh, this isn't okay? I said, no, it's fine. And then he quickly goes into the living room. So he has a better backdrop, like a nice couch, nice lamp. And I'm like, oh, my God, this is crazy. But to make it even better, I'm thinking, man, it's quiet. And I guess the boys were in the other room, but I think Brittany was right there. I couldn't see her, his wife, with their daughter, Rylan. And you can hear her as we're doing the interview in the background. Be quiet, Daddy's doing an interview. But you can hear that while he's answering questions. And then at the end of the interview, you can kind of hear the Brees boys a little bit. And then it was like it was choreographed. The family dog jumps in his lap for the last question. And it was unbelievable, man. It was really, really good. And then the next week, when you had that crazy game where Denver had a COVID outbreak, they didn't have a real quarterback. Brees smartly is not in the kitchen, is not in the living room. He's isolated in his office. So nobody, including the family dog, are around. So I would say that one. And the night he broke the all-time yardage record when he let all of his sons stay up late and they were behind the camera and it was so late and they were so well behaved. And I looked at him when we were closing the interview in the Superdome and I said, man, they've been well behaved. Nobody can see him behind the camera. Let's bring the boys in. And I tell you, man, one thing that Drew is satisfied about in his career is that his boys will remember their dad playing football. Because I know, talking to a lot of former players, you guys know this, the one regret that a lot of them have is that my kids don't remember me playing. I know, talking to Lance Moore, he has, 3 kids, and he told me that they'll never remember me playing football. But for Drew, that moment and that night was huge. And obviously he had a few more seasons after that. So those would be the ones that stand out for me. Yeah.
Completely different quote unquote sport, but I know in wrestling, like Bill Goldberg, like he's come back recently just so his son could see him wrestle in the ring. So that's a thing that athletes regardless have a thing about wanting their kids to see them play in kind of how they were in their peak and prime. In our little Saints Twitter community, especially for what we have in our Discord community, for people who have graciously donated to our podcast, we kind of open it up for questions to the people, with you being on the show tonight. So I'm going to ask some from the questions we got from our fans. So we have our guy G asked, could you see Brees potentially transitioning to the coaching world if and when Sean Payton's come back to coaching, either as an offensive consultant or a quarterback coach?
That's a great question. In my book, because I'm always promoting the book, guys, it always comes back to the book. Scott Shanley, who's a really good friend of mine, and we do a podcast together, and we also does work for CST. And here's the thing is Shanley told me a long time ago, he thinks Brees would be a great head coach in the NFL. And in the book, I asked Roman Harper about it, I asked Lance Moore about it. They weigh in on his prospects. So that's a good question. In my mind, I think Brees is such a family guy and his kids are so young. And boy, if calling games for Notre Dame and being away 2 or 3 days longer a week, man, when you're a coach, you're gone every day. So I think his kids are too young. I think if his kids were older, it would be different. I think there's no doubt he would be a great coach, but I just don't see that happening just because he's in family mode right now. He really is.
Yeah, and one thing I always wondered, would he want to go the Elway route, be a front office guy, even if not the GM, but just kind of that decision maker or a part of the decision making when you see guys like John Lynch, Elway. I think, I don't think it would be crazy for Brees, to fit into that role,
Wouldn't it be funny if, let's say, I don't know, 5 years from now, that you have 3 GMs and their name Brees, Brady, and Manning?
It can happen, man.
They're scattered all over the NFL,
I can see it.
Yeah, I could too. I mean, I think you bring up great points. I think the great thing about Brees, and Zach Streep says this in my book, and I believe it is, he's kind of all over the place right now. He's doing a lot of business interests. He's doing a lot of hobbies. He's doing a lot of things with his kids. He's in TV, and eventually he'll find his niche. I mean, he hasn't backed down from running for office. I think everything is on the table, except I don't know about coaching just because he's in family mode. But I agree with you that when you're GM, maybe that's something that he could graduate to down the road, like a John Lynch, who called games on Fox for a while and just kind of, had a good feel for the league, and obviously has a great reputation, has an eye for talent. So I would see front office being in his future more than being a coach for sure.
It's funny. I'd never really thought about Drew in that role, but now that it's brought up, it's kind of hard for me not to see it, because I could easily see that being a route or an option of something that he potentially would want to do. One question in the Discord that got asked, and I had to ask it, is and this is not just a Discord question. I think this has been percolating in Saints Twitter as like an urban legend for years now. But the year that Sean Payton was suspended and Pete Carmichael was the offensive coordinator calling plays, it was Drew like just going rogue and just changing plays often, and when the plays were called, or was he sticking to the plays that were called?
I think it happened. There's no doubt about it. But I think also what helps is when you look at it, that's what it'll be interesting to see with Jameis this year. The whole dynamic with he and Carmichael is, you guys know this. I mean, if there's an antithesis to Sean Payton, it's Pete Carmichael in terms of personality.
Yeah. That is so perfectly said.
I mean, come on, man. That's just the way it is.
I've talked about it a lot on here. It's true.
I mean, if I even get the feeling that obviously Drew respects Pete Carmichael. They were together in San Diego, for crying out loud, before they were together in New Orleans. There's a definite connection there. There's a definite respect. But you know this, guys, and I'm just going to say it. If you work for a boss who's a hard ass, you're not going to break the rules as much as a boss that's not a hard ass.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
It's the whole thing in when substitute teacher when we were in school.
Yes.
So, as soon as that sub came in,
right,
classroom is acting a fool.
Right. I mean, it goes for really anything in life. I don't know. Some parents are stricter than others. Some parents of friends are stricter. You gotta, you just kind of acclimate to the environment.
Yeah. And it's personality too. Like,
yeah,
Sean Payton is the biggest personality in the room, pretty much wherever he goes. Mm-hmm. Like, he's just a big personality, and that's not Pete, and that's not to denigrate Pete in any way, because there's other ways to coach. You don't have to be a loud, boisterous coach to be a great coach. You know what I'm saying? So.
Right.
I mean, Pete could get it done any other kind of way, but it is just the dynamic of it that be interesting. And that's one of my major questions for this upcoming seasons is, will Pete just be able to take hold of this offense and make it his? Because Dennis Allen, we know he's a defensive coach. He's gonna, be controller of the defense. Yeah, he's gonna look over the team, but he's looking for Pete Carmichael to really grab this offense and make it his. And it's really his time. It's a great opportunity for him. So I would really love to see him succeed. But it's just a question I have going into the season.
Well, especially when it comes to adjustments, because that's where Sean Payton was so good, really week to week, quarter by quarter. And, a lot of people talk about Bill Belichick changing the game plan during the game. I mean, Sean Payton did that. I mean, people – and Belichick is the greatest ever, okay? Man, I'm not taking anything away from him. But sometimes people compliment – certain people and act like nobody else does it, which is not true. Maybe they just don't do it consistently as well. But in terms of adjustments, that's where I want to see it, because there's no doubt that he's innovative and he can call a game. But let's see, if he can adjust with a quarterback like Jameis Winston, guys, that often tries to do too much. I know we'll delve into this probably, but my biggest worry about the Saints right now is what's going to happen with Kamara. Because if Kamara is suspended for a long time, or longer than maybe some of us think, that to me is going to have such a domino effect, not only not having Alvin Kamara, but Jameis Winston thinking he's going to have to do too much. And when Jameis Winston thinks that's not good. It's not good for the football team. And we've seen in the past, even though he's got the receiving core that's the most improved in the NFL, if you think that you don't have that running game and you got to do too much, to me, that's the big question for the Saints this year. I know we're getting off topic, but
it's
a big one for me.
It's a huge question for the Saints, and something that Ryan and I have kind of talked about ad nauseum on this podcast is, and maybe they'll address it in a way like getting a Darrell Williams, but something that Ryan and I have kind of been pulling our hair out of our head over is we know that, Alvin has this legal issue. He may get suspended 6 games at any point in the season. We don't know, but there hasn't really been the backup running back position hasn't really been addressed. You have Tony Jones Jr., who I'd be okay not seeing Tony Jones Jr. play football again. Love Mark Ingram as a player, but I think Mark Ingram's days as a runner has seen better days. And so it seems like all the baskets are in the AK basket. Still off season. There could be a little trade. There could be a free agent signing, but it's kind of bare right now behind AK, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, I like their draft, but I wish they would have drafted a running back just to have a guy there, I don't know, because Ingram just can't do it by himself. And you know what? Maybe that's a good sign. Maybe they know something we don't, that it's not going to be that bad, that Ingram can hold the fourth down if it's a quarter of a season or something. But and then, they had bigger needs too than running back. I get that. Obviously, you're not going to do it too high, but yeah, to me, that's just the big question mark, because you get Michael Thomas back. You hope he's, close to the same guy that we last saw, but then you lose potentially Alvin Kamara. It just seems like this offense can't be full bore because they keep losing guys for whatever reason. That's frustrating.
So what do you have planned this upcoming season, with your business, your television business and, CST? I mean, you guys want to do like one-on-ones with Jameis, or what do you got going on?
Well, you know what? Right now, we're still kind of working out what we're going to do next season. But I've been doing a fun series with the Saints, the team itself, a series called Errands, where we run errands with former players. And we started with Joe Horn. And if Saints fans, if you haven't seen it, just go to YouTube, hit Errands, like you're running errands, and Saints. It's also on all their platforms, social media, and their website. But we just wrapped up our third season. And I tell you, one of the most enjoyable shoots I've had, and we've done Archie Manning, we've done Morton Anderson, we've done Colston, a lot of big names. We've done almost 20 of them now. We did Randall Gay a month ago, and he's an attorney now in Baton Rouge.
Yeah, it's crazy. I didn't even know that.
Yeah, we just released it a couple weeks ago, and what?
Excuse me? Did I miss this?
He's an attorney, and he took the LSAT. And he asked Sean, he took the LSAT the year after the Saints won the Super Bowl, had to miss mandatory workouts, asked Sean Payton. Sean Payton immediately gave him his blessing. He and his wife graduated from law school from Southern University the same year. And what I love about Randall Gay is, man, that guy, he would have been fine without football. He was a gifted student growing up. He was a straight A student. Academics were always important to him. And of course, he had a great career at LSU, but he was undrafted. He's almost like, a Forrest Gump existence. Then a lot of guys get hurt in New England. He starts and wins the Super Bowl, could have won another Super Bowl, but they lost to the Giants. Then, oh, by the way, gets traded to, or gets free agents, goes into free agency, signs with the Saints, wins another Super Bowl. But he's a lawyer now. He's a district attorney, and he's really helping out that community a great deal. And I'll tell you, the last one we're going to release in the next few weeks, we just sent to the Saints today, is I spent a couple hours with Willie Roaf, and we drove around. And here's the line of it, guys. I'm not the biggest guy in the world. So I'm with Willie Roaf, and we're driving around. And I said, Willie, how much did you weigh when you were born? He said, I was 9 pounds, 3 ounces. And I said, you know what, Willie? I was 10.5 pounds when I was born. So at one point in my life, I was bigger than you. So that's the kind of stuff we like to have fun with. I tell you, for Saints fans, they'll appreciate this. I'll give you a little tease. Willie Roaf obviously didn't win a playoff game till later in his Saints career, and talks about the Ricky Williams trade. And he kind of huffed when I brought it up. But in this Aaron's episode that's going to be released in the next week or two, he tells me what he would have done if he was general manager of the Saints instead of trading all the picks for Ricky Williams. And boy, you'll love his answer. And it would have changed the whole complexion of the Saints back in 2000. So, yeah, I mean, we've done, I'd say one of my favorites is Roman Harper that we did. He really put me to work. We went to Target. We went to a furniture store. I always made fun of his gray hair. We got a haircut. We did Jim Mora, who was so much fun. He embraced all the catchphrases, and that was fun. Keenan Lewis was great. Yeah, we bought shoes. We went to a barbecue place. I mean, there were so many that were fun. I mean, we haven't had one that wasn't fun, actually. They're all different personalities. And I mean, the fact that Archie Manning and Morton Anderson and Pat Swilling did it during the pandemic. I mean, we're driving around in a car with Archie Manning for 2.5 hours in the heart of the pandemic. So it's, what I will also tell you about in that series is we just shot an episode with CJ Garner-Johnson in the last couple months.
Oh boy.
And one of the errands, he didn't drive, but he wanted me to ride in his brand new Rolls Royce. Okay. And he had a driver. He had a driver. So we had to sit. We had to
stop the press. Stop.
Yeah. Yeah.
CJ Garner-Johnson got a Rolls Royce.
He has a Rolls Royce. Okay. I'm breaking news here on the podcast. I haven't told anybody this.
That's the most typical CJ sounding thing ever. Ever.
All right, you'll love this though. I'll send you. You have to give me your number. I'll send you a picture. Okay, so we're in the Rolls Royce. We had to put the GoPro cameras in the back because he didn't want to drive. And the Rolls Royce, when we're driving, he throws on Instagram Live.
Of course he does, because that's what CD does.
And so all of a sudden, this was the best part of it, though, is he told me that he wants to switch numbers with Jameis Winston. He's like, Jameis needs to go back to his old number. He had better luck with that number, and give me his number 2. And I said, well, why don't we call Jameis? So he calls Jameis. We're on Instagram Live. Man, Jameis didn't answer. But boy, if he would have answered, that would have been TV gold, right?
Gold.
Yes.
Gold.
Yes.
Mike, I this is something that just in your career, anyone who may be listening to this podcast, we do pretty decent numbers, but just if you just could just touch on how you got into your career, because I have a feeling that some of our listeners may be interested in that career path if they're already not set on their career, especially if they're younger, and just how you kind of got into your career and where you are now, being able to do the things you are in your career.
Well, I'm glad you asked me that, because I started teaching. I got my master's degree 3 years ago because I wanted to teach in college. And I started
Congratulations.
Thank you.
On that.
And that damn thesis was harder than the Brees Way book. I'll tell you that. Sure. All right. So I started teaching in college because I wanted to help and really encourage people who want to get in the business, because there's a lot of negativity right now. There's a lot of negativity because local news is not what it used to be. The newspapers are dying. But what I will tell, before I tell you how I got in, anybody who's listening to this, I want you to know that the opportunities for you to get in the business are much greater than old man me 30 years ago when I graduated from the University of Florida. Look at you guys. You started a podcast. You have a great following. You couldn't do that 30 years ago. You couldn't.
Nope. No point. That's a great point.
If you have an idea and you're passionate about it and you're frankly aggressive about it, you can make it happen. You can. I'll tell you, I have a joke that the first tape I sent out, and it used to be tapes, not links on internet. Before. Yeah. All right, that's how old I am. It was Nacogdoches, Texas, right?
I know exactly where that is.
You know where Nacogdoches, Texas is?
Yeah,
all right.
Sure do.
Stephen F. Austin.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so the sports director calls me, and he's like, "We want to hire you." And I'm thinking, "Oh my God, I would have gone anywhere. I didn't care. I was excited to go there." And so a week later, he calls me again. He said, "Listen, they'd sent me a plane ticket. That's when they actually sent plane tickets to you." He said, "We brought some media consultants in, and they think you look too young. So we're going to have to void the plane ticket. I'm sorry, we're going to have to find somebody else." Fast forward 10 years later, I'm working for Fox Sports Net, and I'm covering the NBA playoffs in Milwaukee. And we all have beers afterwards with the local media, me and my guys. And I met the guy who got the Nacogdoches job. It was awesome. So we're like boys now. So when it's his birthday, he'll text me, or I'll text him Happy Nacogdoches Day. When it's my birthday, he'll text me Happy Nacogdoches Day. So it's funny. But how I got in the business, I want to give you that backstory. After that, it took me a while, and I got a lot of no's. I got a lot of close yeses. I actually dubbed off 30 tapes, guys, at least. And I drove around the country. From where my folks lived at the time, Tallahassee, Florida. I drove a big triangle in the middle of the country. I drove from Tallahassee, Florida to Minneapolis, Minnesota, to your stop, Lubbock, Texas, where a buddy of mine was in Midland, Texas.
2 hours away from Lubbock.
Exactly. He's still there. He's in Midland. He's my guy. So we did a big triangle. And out of that, I would call news directors a couple of days before I was in town. "Hey, I'm in town. If you just give me 5 minutes, that's all I need. I just want to meet you, even if you don't have an opening. most of the time people met with me. I would say 80%, maybe 90% of the time they would meet with me only quickly. And out of that trip, guys, I got my first TV job in Tuscaloosa, Alabama. I was a number 3 guy making $12,000 a year. I didn't see Alabama lose for about a year and a half because they won the national title with Gene Stallings. But that is an example of how there is not one way to get in the business. There are a million ways to get in the business. You just got to want it. Like, you got to want to do a podcast. You got to want to be passionate about something. There's no correct answer on how to get in the business. You just got to find a way. That's
very motivational because, I mean, me and Adam, we weren't like these super, ambitious podcasters, anything like that. Adam had already done a podcast. I had thought about it for a long time. And, like me and you, like we had talked about before we got on here, just do it. And that's pretty much what happened. I think a lot of people during the pandemic, when the pandemic first started, they had all this time. And we were like, man, let's just do it, man. Like, let's get Tony Pauline on here and let's just do a podcast, put it out and see what happens. And we got like 100 listeners and it was like, let's do another one. And we've been doing it pretty much a couple times a week ever since. And it's grown, exponentially since. So that's really motivational. And I try to tell people that even though I don't have any insider knowledge, especially with stuff like sports, man, like you just got to get content out there. It's such a content era. Video, TikTok, blogs, just you name it. And one thing that has amazed me, just being on Saints Twitter, the past, 12, 13 years, is seeing people that started out as fans, but now, guys like John Hendricks over at SI and, USA Today, Dylan over at USA Today, Ross Jackson over at USA Today, Maddie, watching Nick Underhill come down here, as just a nobody, kind of build something of his own down here. Kevin Washington, just so many people that started out as fans and just people that love football with the football sickness, starting to build their own brands and own little content areas and become popular doing it, able to kind of live off it. It's just amazing to see when you look at the time we're in right now.
And you nailed it. I mean, that's just the way. There's so much negativity, but the people who are negative aren't the people who want to change. And frankly, I'm not very active on Twitter. I'm an old guy, so most of my old friends are on Facebook and all that stuff. So I'm showing my age a little bit. Maybe on this podcast, I'll get some more Saints followers, but I'm not as active as I should be. But here's the thing is I'm writing a new book now, and I want to be a motivational speaker. That's my big goal moving forward now. And I'm writing a book called Don't Quit, Pivot. And it's basically the way of the world now. You guys know this. If you're passionate about something, maybe it doesn't work out, but I don't care if you're an accountant, if you're an engineer, if you're a lawyer, you're a doctor, you're a hairstylist, you're a CEO of a company. You may get laid off when you're 30 or 40 or 50, but we all have skills, man. We all have acquired skills. Use those skills and couple it with your passion, and you can create a new career for yourself. And Ryan, you just listed 4 or 5 people that have done that. And it's you can do it. You got to put the work in. And you know what? I interviewed a lot of former sportscasters for my book who are doing different things, and they echoed what you said. The first step is to just do it. Start doing it. Start creating content. Start liking the craft, and you'll get better at it.
I couldn't have said it better myself. When years ago, it feels like years ago, it was the Pete draft. So what was that, 2015? I just had an idea. At the time, me and Nick Underhill were really good friends. And I said, I don't think there's ever been this is podcasting is still in its still infancy, I think. But I just had this idea of I don't think there's a podcast where you can, that you have a super fan of a team and someone who actually covers the team together. And that was the concept of the Saints Talk podcast, right? Of you have a super fan, and my takes are the fanatical fandom aspect, and then you have the person who actually covers the team, and so it just kind of that was my first idea. And now Ryan and I do it, and it's crazy. It's crazy. And, you know, both Ryan and I have our full-time jobs, our careers. I love what I do being a social worker. I don't, you know, see myself ever leaving like that realm, because I found like my passion in helping people and helping kids. But that aside, the fact that we can do this as a hobby, but it's a hobby that we both thoroughly enjoy, and can provide content to fans and Saints fans of the like. It's great. It really is great, and kind of shows the sign of the times. The last question that I have for you is, seems like you have covered a plethora of sporting events and games in your career and in your life. Give me your top 2 or 3 games that you've been at and covered. Doesn't matter if it's Saints related or not, you know, football or not. Just what are the top 3 games you've been to?
Wow. I tell you, I covered, for me, what's up there is the NFC Championship game when the Saints beat the Vikings. Just because it was such an ebb and flow in that game. There's so many times you thought they can't lose this game, really, with everything. They got home field, you know, they have this great season, they can't lose. And then the post game was the best moment of my career, frankly. When Sean Payton, for Saints fans who don't know this, Sean Payton used to have this white tent that was right outside the locker room where he would have family members or VIPs. You never knew who the hell was in there, really. I mean, it was amazing the people that would walk out of there. But on that day, there's a cooling off period after the game. And Jimmy Buffett walks out of the tent, and I'm just trying to kill time. And he's holding a margarita. And I'm thinking, is this a dream or something? And I said, and I love a podcast because I can directly quote. This is in the book too. But I said, Jimmy, can I get you? He's like, shit, yeah, let's do it. So we took the margarita and I put it on the monitor. I'm like, I'm a big fan of yours. Let me take the margarita. And that would have been enough, guys, right? I mean, the Saints are going to the Super Bowl. You know, I know I'm going to get Brees. We know we're going to get players, but Jimmy Buffett was great. And halfway through the interview, maybe even only 2 questions in, Sean Payton comes up, brings the NFC Championship trophy, kisses Jimmy Buffett, and joins us. If you go to YouTube and hit Jimmy Buffett and Sean Payton and I guess CST, it's up there. It's still up there. It's unbelievable. And that was before social media was kind of big, you know, so we couldn't like we can now. But I just thought that game stood out. Boy, I'm trying to think. I tell you, man, I covered Florida's back-to-back basketball national championships. And before I covered the Saints, that was my first assignment with CST. And they said, you're going to cover Florida and you're going to cover LSU and you're going to follow them wherever they go in the tournament. So and that's back to the you better have other options in life, because if that's all I'm leaning on, they go down in round 1, I'm like a professional gambler again. You can't live that way. But they both make the Final Four. LSU friggin' beats Duke. Florida goes on this run, and then Florida wins it all. And then they win it again the next year. And that was unbelievable. And I would think, I'm trying to think of another game, because definitely that Minnesota game, I mean, the Super Bowl was great, but that Minnesota game with Buffett and that post-game show we had was unbelievable. Man. I mean, it was crazy. I'm thinking another Saints memory. I just think all the you know what? I know Brady's going to have the records, but all the record-breaking nights of Brees, man, just in the totality of all of them, I just think they were all just so special, because they were records. I think the Unitas record was one I think he'll have for a while. Yeah, it was one of those records where, you know, you could talk about today's game, the passing game, and all the numbers guys are putting up, but that record's different, because that record has been around for a long time. It's Johnny Unitas.
Yeah, no. So the fact that he has it like twice, doesn't he? Like, didn't he, like, he broke it once, but then he surpassed the record again. So he's like 1 and 2 on the list. I think Brady's up there at some point.
Well, Brady had a rainy game that ended it, because he was, like a lot of these records, was on his heels. I'll tell you something I haven't told anybody, that when I did my last interview with Brees, we were in a commercial break. You'll love this story. And I said, we keep talking about all your records, but I think the one you're going to have the longest is that Unitas record. And he looked at me immediately. He's like, nah. He's like, Mahomes will break it.
Yeah.
And I said, but then he's like, but you know what? I remember that game where the streak ended. It was that Thursday game against Atlanta.
Yeah.
And
five interceptions.
Yeah, you know it.
Yeah.
So Brees remembers everything, like a lot of these quarterbacks. And here he's like, I should have hit Sproles on this little pass. And he goes, you know what? If I would have hit that, I think he said he had a touchdown in like the next 20 games after that. That record would have been so far out of reach.
Right.
It would have been crazy. So, he, like a lot of things with Drew, he appreciates the good, but he's hard on himself with the bad. I think it was the night he had the touchdown record or the yardage record. I think it was the touchdown record where he was like 19-20 or something. He had one incomplete pass.
The Colts,
he was so hard on himself about that after the game that he couldn't really even enjoy the record because he was like, can you imagine if I would have gone 20 for 20 or whatever it was?
Like that is like we talked about at the beginning of this podcast just about how competitive he is. Like, and I want to say this in the most polite way possible because I think every elite athlete is wired this way. But that is like some absolutely like psychopathic. Like that is
that's how they are. That's how Kobe Bryant was. That's how Michael Jordan was. You know what I'm saying?
All of them. Every single one of them were wired that way. I know. I said that was the last one I had for you, Mike. But one.
No, you're fine, man. Keep going. Keep going. It's fine.
You brought up the Mahomes thing, so I have to ask this because you're so close to Brees and knew him so well. If the Chiefs didn't trade up and the Saints and Sean Payton drafted Mahomes, which I think, like, just like we talked about the Tom Brady coming to New Orleans if Drew wasn't back, everyone knows that Mahomes would have been the pick. How do you, the sliding doors moment, right? How do you think that would have been for Drew? And hypothetically, if Sean Payton saw like in practice Mahomes bench for, on the bench for a year, but like in practice, he just saw that talent and just knew that he couldn't contain it any longer. And I know, again, this is a big sliding door moment, a big like what if, but like what team potentially could you have seen Drew go to? Because at some point, obviously Mahomes would have taken over the reins.
Well, I think the good news for the Saints is they don't get Lattimore, but they get all the other guys in that 17 draft, right? So that would have worked out pretty well. I don't think it would have been quite an Alex Smith situation, but I think it would have been close. And we wouldn't have had the argument of, is he going to retire after 2019? He wouldn't be a New Orleans Saint in 2020. That wouldn't have happened, if not sooner. I think it would have taken a little longer than it took Alex Smith to say goodbye to Kansas City and Andy Reid, but it would have happened sooner. I mean, this is you got to win business, man. I mean, that's just the way it is. And I also think the difference between that and Alex Smith and Andy Reid is also the difference between Bill Belichick and Tom Brady and Sean Payton and Drew Brees. They just had a different kinship, and Sean Payton's a different guy than Belichick. I remember asking Randall Gay this recently in that Aaron segment because Gay obviously played for Belichick and Sean Payton. And he said really the main difference, he played for Nick Saban too. And he really lumped in Belichick and Saban together. They're tactical guys. You got to be here, you got to be there. But Sean Payton's a motivator. He's a people guy. And because of that, which I thought was great perspective, I think he would have given Brees every chance to stay in New Orleans. But obviously talent would win out. I don't see him staying. Oh, man, he would have been there 2017, 2018. But 2019 guys would have been interesting. And we know how Drew's shoulder, it was getting worse and he wasn't the same quarterback. So I think 2017, yes. 2018, yeah. 2019, I'm not sure. I'm really not. And what's really crazy is all the what ifs if he does go somewhere else, which he probably would have,
Yeah. Just the thought of it is like, just the Jets or maybe, Miami.
Yeah.
Oh my God. I just wouldn't want to see it.
Yeah. Crazy.
I don't have any more for you. I really appreciated you coming on. It was a great talk. I knew it would be. I really, enjoyed your coverage over the years. thought you just, just always handled yourself well as a media person, and you always asked good questions and took time to get to know the players and have a little fun. But you always came with with the good questions that fans wanted to hear. So I just wanted to let you know we really appreciate that.
No, I really appreciate you guys. Continued success, and you're an example of if you have passion, you can really turn something into a great outlet for Saints fans. And I know it continues to grow, and I wish you continued success.
Thank you so much, Mike. If you're listening, check out the Brees Way. Like Mike said, Father's Day is quickly approaching. If you're ladies, if you're listening to this, you got your fella. You can search the Brees Way on Amazon. Find it, a good Father's Day present. In terms of just Mike's work, please watch all his stuff on YouTube in regards to the Aaron show with the Saints, and just I've had a blast talking to you, Mike. I appreciate you so much for coming on. Ryan and I again thank you for our copies of the Brees Way. Please pick it up. And then something that I think I actually want to do, speaking of this, something I want to do for our Patreons is I'm gonna purchase another copy myself. And then raffle that off to a member of our Patreon group so someone can receive it, that are providing and contributing to the podcast, just as a way of us raffling off something that we're doing a lot more with this upcoming season. So thank you so much, Mike, for coming on. We truly appreciate it. Been a great, amazing chat with you.
Hey, I'll add this too. If any of your listeners just tell me that they're listening to your podcast and buy the book on MikeNabors.com, I will sell it to them for $12, which is $8 off the price currently that we're selling it for. And we're also going to put out an audio book. And we're going to put a hard cover book. Hopefully both will be out for Father's Day. But if you go to MikeNabors.com, tell them you listen to your podcast, I'll send you an autographed copy for a $12 discounted price.
Hey, Mike, what's your Twitter at?
It's real easy. I beat all the other Mike Nabors in the world. I'm at Mike Nabors, N-A-B as in boy, O-R-S. And I'm not as active on Twitter as I should be, but I know this podcast is going to get me over 2,000, man. I'm 8 behind. Got to get me over 2,000. You guys are going to carry me over, man.
Easy. That's
kind of pathetic, actually.
The fact that you and I are as close as we are in followers.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing. Here's the thing about Twitter, though, that I love is I'll never forget. Remember the night on NBC where Brees picked the Saints and nobody else did?
Yeah.
I remember taking a stupid picture in the press box and just putting that out there and getting 500 or 600 likes. And then I'll put an errands with Randall Gay and I'll get 1 like.
Yeah, no.
That's just the way of the world. You know how it is, man.
It is.
That's all social media is. So Saints Twitter, our listeners, you can't beat that deal. So hit up Mike on Twitter and let him know that you are a hashtag Saints Twitter podcast fan and get a copy of the Brees Way, $8 off. And then I'm also, we as a podcast are also going to raffle off a copy as well. So thank you so much for coming on. I'm also confident that those book sales are going to go up as well. So thank you again, Mike. It's been a pleasure.
Hey, continued success, guys. Hopefully one day we'll meet in person, but should be an interesting season, and look forward to meeting you in person down the road.
We will be at Ryan and I are doing a pod meetup for the entire weekend of the Raiders game, which is the Halloween weekend. So we're all going to be in New Orleans. So I'm sure we can figure something out.
Let me know. Yeah. I have your, just send me your contact info. We'll keep in touch, and that would be great. I'd love to meet you in person.
Hell yeah.
Sounds great, Mike. Thank you so much for coming on. With that, we're out.
Peace.
This is the story of the one. As a maintenance engineer, he hears things differently. To the untrained ear, everything on his shop floor might sound fine, but he can hear gears grinding or a belt slipping. So he steps in to fix the problem at hand before it gets out of hand. And he knows Granger's got the right product he needs to get the job done, which is music to his ears. Call, click Granger.com, or just stop by. Granger, for the ones who get it done.